Running into a ghost would be scary and disturbing enough. But what do you do when the ghost seems to have a very clear intention to intrude your life or even possess you over? The first instinct would be running away, and perhaps look for help from somebody with more understanding about ghostly business. That's why so many of the stories I read on my channel features shamans. But there are some brave souls too, either with a natural-born strong energy or a fighting spirit induced by the desperate situation. Choose to fight against ghosts, evils, or even the death itself, and ultimately win over. No formal ritual or exorcism, but sheer willpower and anger that is stronger than the evil spirits. Today I collect the stories of the people who stood their ground against various paranormal forces that threatened their life. As usual, I have no idea if such is even possible, but they indeed make an interesting read. So, here are 6 allegedly true stories from the people who fought away ghosts. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by a host. Anthony. Whenever I move, I dream about somebody trying to barge into my place. I must have moved around 5-6 times since I became independent starting my uni, and every single time, 2 or 3 women would try to trespass, giggling all the while. I would shout and swear them away, but they would return when I moved to another place. The last place was a tiny flat, its bedroom facing straight the entrance. And probably for that reason, these invaders came actually into my bedroom. I managed to fight them off, but they started coming back in my dreams several times a week, no matter how harshly I swore and pushed them off. For them it seemed more like some sort of amusing game. I grew tired of it and felt also a bit alarmed. Fortunately, some change in my situation made me leave the flat and move back to my family home. But the intruders in my dream followed there too, this time with a couple of men together with them. When they were just women, it was irritating, but with the guys together with them, it started feeling threatening. But the heightened fear fueled my anger even more at the same time. So much so, normally clueless, giggly women noticed my fury and stayed well behind the guys. At the time, I hadn't finished decorating my room, and there were still bits of wardrobe pieces to be assembled. I picked one beam out of them and started beating the guys. I just beat the hell out of the guys till they fled. Next night, just the 2 guys came back in my dream, visibly upset themselves. Why the heck are they upset? I'm the one intruded by them. So with even more burning fury, I picked up a beam again and beat them off. It carried on every night. Problem was, by the 4th day, I had finally finished assembling the wardrobe, and in the dream too, I had no more beam to beat the intruders with. Seeing me lost, the guys smirked. It only fanned my anger even more, so I just punched them with my fist. If it were in real life, that would have killed them. They tried to flee, but I had them by their hair and carried on punch, punch, punch. When I woke up, my body ached. Then in the morning, Mom said, for the past few nights, her sleep was disturbed by noises from the hallway, though she wasn't sure whether the noise was from the outside or upstairs neighbors. And she asked me if I didn't hear it too, since my room was closest to the front door. coincidence or not, her account left me spooked. I didn't want to worry Mom further, so I discreetly sprinkled some salt around the front door. Maybe thanks to that, or maybe because they'd also had it enough from me, the intruders didn't return to this day. Even in a dream, don't let yourself be bullied. Just fight back. It's a story of my acquaintance. I'll call her Mi-jung for the sake of the story. Mi-jung is a single mom. One day she had an urgent business trip that would take a few days. She left her little son to a friend in the neighborhood. The friend was a follower of somewhat dubious religion, but usually very friendly and got along well with her son too, so looked an ideal babysitter. A few days later, Mi-jung returned. She picked her son up and cooked a full-blown homemade dinner too to make it up to her son for her few days of absence. "Didn't you miss Mommy, sweet?" Mi-jung asked at the dinner table. "Of course. I missed you so much, Mommy," son replied. Mi-jung's smile turned into a cold stare. "Why are you there? What are you doing, my son?" she yelled. Her son got scared of his mom's sudden shift and mumbled tearfully, "Why, what is it, Mommy?" Regardless, Mi-jung snatched the child by his wrist, dragged him to the kitchen, and started showering him with sea salt and red beans. Now the boy was full on screams and cries, but Mi-jung only huffed and said, "You're playing it hard," and carried on the salt shower.
All right, I'm gonna get out. Stop, damn it!
The voice from her son was not the boy's voice, but wobbly and glottal like from a stretched recording tape. Soon, what looked like a thick white smoke oozed out of her son's body. It had female features, but was hard to define the age. Her face was distorted and looked nasty. Mi-jung checked the breath of now collapsed and limp child, and determined he was simply asleep. She took him to his bed, and came back to the table to finish her dinner. The ghost was still hanging around, and thought it could scare Mi-jung. It pushed its horrible face right up to Mi-jung's, but Mi-jung looked right back into its eyes, and coldly said, "My son is as nasty as I am. He would never so sweetly say, 'I missed you, Mommy.' Oh, and by the way, he hates aubergines too. He would normally have kicked the table as soon as I brought out the aubergine dish here. Do better, you bitch, if you want to fool me." Her cold and untouchable countenance must have scared the ghost, and it soon ran away. After dinner, Mi-jung called her friend who babysitted her son, because she suspected as much that it had got to do with her. But nobody picked it up. When she went to see her the following day, the house was empty too. Fortunately, her son went back to his normal, delinquent self. No wonder Mi-jung likes to recount what the shaman in her childhood neighborhood used to comment whenever she saw Mi-jung passed by. "That girl was born with the spirit of a tiger." It's from about 10 years ago. It was the Lunar New Year's Day, and as usual, all the family and relatives gathered at my grandpa's, except for my family that particular year, because we visited my mom's family first for some family issue. And this is what my older cousin later told me as he experienced that holiday. On the first day of the New Year's holiday, the family decided to lunch out to celebrate the occasion, all about 20 of them. But my cousin, who was then a uni student, had a big party with the mates the previous night and was still knocked out. In the end, they left him alone sleeping and headed out for the big family lunch. And cousin had a dream. In the dream, he found himself at Grandpa's place, just as in reality. The short winter sun was already fading away. Somebody rang the doorbell, and cousin opened the door to his uni mates, with whom he had a drink party the night before. They brought even more drinks, and cousin and mates just had another round of drinks again. Then one of the mates stood up saying he needed to leak, but he instead headed down to the basement. Now, Grandpa's house had a large basement that he used as a storage. It was one big open space with no dividing walls. As a child, I didn't want to go down there because I was scared of the big, dark, cave-like space where any voice or sound reverbed creepily. Anyway, shortly after, another mate stood up that he too needed to pee, and headed to the basement, and that way all the other mates disappeared to the basement one by one until cousin was left alone. He waited, but nobody came back up. In the end, he went down to the basement himself to search for his mates. He tried to turn on the light there, but it didn't turn on. He waited at the foot of the stairs till his eyes got used to the darkness, and when he finally could make out, what he saw were his mates, all strewn about on the floor of the basement, lifeless. Cousin was just frozen stuck there with terror and shock, until he saw somebody sitting at the far end of the basement. Could it be one of his mates? He should be able to explain whatever had happened, he thought, and approached the figure, taking steps over his mates' blood-soaked bodies. But the sitting man wasn't his mate. It was an old man with silver hair, and all in black. Numerous blackbirds or bats fluttering about behind the man who was sitting straight and motionless. Cousin was terrified, but couldn't stop his steps towards him. And when he came right in front of him, the old man stood up. My cousin is a fairly tall guy, well over 6 feet, but when the old man stood up, cousin's eyes barely reached his chest. Overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the giant of the man, cousin lifted his shivering eyes up, and met by the old man's all black eyes looking down at him with a gleam. Cousin finally turned around and ran for his life. He ran up the long stairs to the basement and barely managed to close the door to the old man, who followed him up with sweeping big steps. But the old man was undeterred and broke the glass of the door and rattled the door as to break it at any moment. But cousin instinctively felt he mustn't let him in, that something terrible was to happen if he did. So he fought back with all his might, as if his life was dependent on it. He stabbed the arm of the old man with a broken piece of glass, got punched by him in return, bit off the hand as a fight back. Broken glass and pieces of door were everywhere, and he himself was covered with blood, but he didn't give up. Then he heard faint banging noise from somewhere, which got gradually bigger and closer. Oh, but he couldn't care for such a thing, and focused more to fight off the old man. Regardless, the knocking noise got louder and clearer, and also somebody called out his name. Cousin opened his eyes, and realized that it was a dream, and somebody was actually knocking on the door, calling his name. Pressing the lingering sense of doom, he opened the door to his mom. "Oh dear, the car the whole family was in has crushed," she said with a shivering voice. Miraculously, none of the family members got seriously injured and just required minor treatments. But when the cousin later saw the crushed car, he realized it really was a miracle that they all survived at all, because the car was totally decimated beyond repair. Could it have anything to do with his particularly ominous nightmare? But he didn't want to think about it and buried it at one corner. A few months later, he joined his mother to a fortune teller. "What a great boy you've got! He saved the entire family," the fortune teller said. Cousin and his mother didn't understand what she meant, and the fortune teller further explained. "The whole family was doomed to be killed a few months ago, but your son fought it off." It brought back the memory of the nightmare and the terrifying old man all at once, and my cousin couldn't help but shiver all over again. It's a story I heard from somewhere as happened to a woman. One day when she was little, her little sister suddenly fell ill. She was perfectly fine in the morning and then suddenly came up with fever and delirium. It was Sunday and local doctor's office was closed. In the end, her mom told the girl to go to the pharmacist and fetch some medicine for the little sister. Girl came back from the pharmacist and rang the doorbell, but nobody answered. After trying it several times, she even looked through the letter slit and saw her mom's feet walking around inside. She further rang the doorbell, knocked, and called for Mom. Still, the door remained locked. The girl sat in front of the door, confused and not sure what to do. A few moments later, she was startled with a sudden chill. It wasn't just a cold air or breeze, but it felt more like an invisible cold energy floated through her and towards the door. She was frozen and couldn't move. And just seconds later, she felt the same cold energy passing through her, this time from the door back to the hallway. Girl panicked. She was seized by the grave sense that something went terribly wrong. She jumped up and went at the door, crying, kicking and banging on it. Finally, her mom opened the door. She looked confused and almost irritated. "What took you so long while your little sister is suffering?" Mom said. Girl didn't realize it, but apparently what felt like just a quarter of an hour to her was actually a few hours. Later that evening, they heard a commotion from their next-door neighbor and found out the grandpa of the family unexpectedly passed away. It prompted the girl's mother to take her daughter's weird account from earlier more seriously, and she took the girl to a shaman the following day. As soon as they stepped into the shaman's room, the shaman shouted,
"You're not supposed to come here! Get out! Out! Out!"
Apparently, the girl was naturally born with such a strong chi, the life energy, enough to stir and scare her shamanic gods away. But the girl's mom insisted they wouldn't move unless shaman should explain to them what happened the previous day.
"Your younger daughter was doomed to die yesterday. The cold energy that girl felt was none other than a grim reaper that came to fetch the soul of your little daughter. But because your older daughter with such a strong chi was guarding in front of your door, the grim reaper was pushed away even before he could reach the door."
The grim reaper still needed to take somebody with him, and so took the poor old grandpa from the next door instead. A friend of my husband suddenly passed away. He of course attended the funeral. Problem was, ever since he came back from the funeral, he got quickly poorly, to the point he could hardly breathe. We went around several different hospitals and a dozen different types of tests, but everything turned out fine. Mother-in-law said it might be some unholy thing followed back from the funeral. She came around and burnt dried mugwort, an old wives' tale, but to no avail. My own mom urged me to visit a shaman. I practically hate shamans and superstitions, but after almost a year-long battle with hubby's mysterious deterioration, I myself lost 7 kilos of weight. And when other little but weird things started happening on top of it all, like home appliances and household goods going broken one after another, I finally relented and visited a shaman. I even agreed to throw a shamanic ritual and all that, but all was just waste of money. When everything failed, the shaman insisted that my husband was now destined to become a shaman. His third eye and third ear should open soon, etc. Shaman hubby? I couldn't see that for hell. Our life dragged on through mud. When a work colleague connected me to a shaman or medium or whatever, and when all she said was my hubby was possessed by a 20-something-year young ghost and he wouldn't let go of my husband, and just went away, I had it enough. I hardly ever swear or lose temper usually, but for once I yelled and shouted like a mad woman.
"You fucking bastard! How dare you claim over my husband? He's mine, you son of a bitch! Get the fuck out of my hubby, or else I'm gonna gouge out your eyes and pull your head out!"
Hubby said he got chills and asked for more blankets, then slept deep under the layers of blankets and woke up fit and fresh again. That's already 10 years ago, but I still feel my blood boil when I look back that one miserable year of one hospital after another hospital, after a shaman, after a ritual, and so on. At least now I can't deny that there are ghosts out there. My story goes back to 1994. I was then a young, aspiring, and poor musician. The only room I could afford in Seoul was a tiny flat on the basement level. With no window, I could not tell if it was day or night there, and the poor plumbing let water drip down whenever I opened the tap. It was literally dark, wet, and eerie place. I guess it is no wonder that hardly any night there passed without a nightmare. I think I had all kinds of nightmares one could imagine whilst living there. But then dreams are dreams, and I forgot all of them by now. Except for this one particular dream. One day I took a nap. In the dream, I was walking down through a town with my mother. Curiously, it seemed we were transported a few hundred years back. People on the street were all in the attire of the last dynasty. It was the market day, and the street was bustling with people and activities. Abruptly, a loud noise was heard from one corner. It sounded like half yelling and half singing of an elderly woman. It seemed stirring the crowd, and they started moving away from it. "What is that?" I asked a man who was passing by.
"That mad shaman hag is back," he said.
Indeed, among the crowd moving away, I caught the glimpse of the shaman woman in dirty white dress. Her hair was not too long, but dirty and messy, flying about her face like an ominous aura. Her paper-white face stood out even from the distance. I instantly got chills like a foreboding. I hurried Mom and get away from her. We found our way to a restaurant and sat ourselves down. But the ominous air grew only more intense. The sense of uncanny that something twisted and deviant was prevailing. I tried to suppress the growing anxiety, waiting for our order to be served. But sudden warm breath of air brushed my cheek. The hot, disgusting air was like that from a rotting flesh. I instinctively turned my head and was met by the face of the shaman hag, staring just 5 centimeters from me. Her complexion was paper white, as if by a clown makeup. Her face was so swollen that her eyes were half closed. If it were not the actively emanating manic energy, the face would have rather belonged to a rotting corpse. And there I woke up from the dream with a startle, only to get paralyzed. I've had sleep paralysis numerous times from my childhood, and by then I knew very well how to break it too. Just calm down and relax, and without a fail, the paralysis broke itself. But that day, my confident trick didn't work. I wasn't sure what was going on. When,
"Don't try. Stay with me,"
a whisper was heard right up to my left ear. The voice was that of a sensual young woman. It got me totally off guard.
"Stay with me. Let me entertain you."
Something deviant was seducing me. I had to do something to save myself.
"Let me. You'll feel good."
That laughter brought out, beyond fear and bafflement, the will to fight. I felt my body concentrating the energy in me, like I was gearing up to sing a high note. And then words poured out from my mouth, despite of myself. "You damned soul! How dare you play your wicked tricks! Begone, I command! Begone!" The moment I uttered the first word, my paralysis broke. I sat straight up on bed and heard the rest of the sentences shoot out from my mouth in a strangely old-fashioned tone that I would otherwise never have said in real life. To shake off the weird feeling, I went out and had a smoke. The afternoon sun outside brought back the sense of normality, and I got on with the rest of the day without further incident. But that wasn't the end. About a fortnight later, I had the same dream. The busy market, the mad shaman, her hot, disgusting breath on my cheek, and the same sensual voice saying,
Don't go. You'll be happy with me.
Had I not saw the face already that resembled more of a drowned victim, the voice was so seductive and sexy that I would have just said, okay. I could break away from it once again by yelling in that strangely old-fashioned manner. I got up and found myself soaked with a cold sweat. Once again, to get away from the dirty feeling, I went out. It was 7 a.m, and I had a smoke, watching the world outside was gearing up to start another day as usual. About 10 minutes of that calmed me down enough, and I headed back to my room to catch some more sleep. But I stopped myself in the middle on the stairs leading down to my room. It felt like I was trying to walk through a cold body of water charged with electricity. Creepy chill and resistance in the air, followed by stinging sensation all over me, as if hundreds of needles were ripping me through. I panicked. All my instinct screamed that I should turn back and run away. But the next moment I also felt I mustn't run away. This thing I wouldn't be able to run away from. The only way was to face it now and fight off. I walked down one step at a time against a sense of resistance and opened up the door to my room with glaring eyes. How could I put it into words what I felt then? It wasn't that there was something to see, but the whole room was dizzily swirling with a mad energy of cold, stinging vortex. It wasn't my room anymore. Soon I sensed a presence at one corner of my room, full of angry resentment. The deadly fury was so intense that there was no room for a context or reasoning. It was scary. But I had no room to step back either, if I were to save my sanity, or indeed my very self. What I did the next I still could not explain. It was not what I planned or figured out to do, but I planted my feet firmly on the ground and started shouting to the insolent presence drawn out from somewhere deep in my belly, a much deeper and muscular voice than my own. I don't remember all the things I said, but the part I remember went like,
I see your pain and resentment. However, it is only going to further tangle your karma by harming yet another person. It is time to move on. Go where you belong.
I think I carried on that manner for good 5 minutes. I felt the resistance and electric charge in the air thin out gradually. I walked in and set myself on the desk chair, lighted my cigarette, and carried on talking to and persuade the presence for another 5 minutes or so. Again, none of it was from my usual self. At the end of it, it was gone, leaving no trace, as if none of it had ever happened. I myself returned to normal too, nonchalantly turning on the computer and logging onto the chatting as if the scary drama I just experienced didn't happen at all. And then I went back to bed and slept soundly a few more hours. It was only when I got up later in the day that I realized how weird and unrealistic the whole thing really was. That presence, a concentrated force of anger, and how I behaved like a totally different person to fight it off, and how the situation just went away in the end like an ice cube melting into water. I was taken by the urgency to record the experience down and possibly communicate it to others. It was time before the World Wide Web, and all we had was the basic message board and chatting rooms on regional network. But anyway, posted my account on the horror-themed message board. A few days later, I received an email from a stranger. It read, "Your account sounds like the same shaman ghost I've been after for a year. Do be careful because she's very dangerous. Let me know if you need any help from me." It sounded earnest, but then as now, there were all sorts of phony characters on the network, and I didn't take him seriously. I just replied that I seemed to have managed to vanish it already. I was back in my normal life, practiced my guitar, met friends for drink, recorded demo tapes. The memory of the shaman ghost was still clear, but gradually lost its edge, and I almost thought it might have been all just an unusual nightmare. But another email I received a month later made it all so real again. It was from the same guy from the last time. "I caught that ghost near Karak Market. I believe you have nothing more to worry anymore," it read. I don't know how one could court a ghost and have no proof if that strange guy's claim be true or not. But the thing was, my room at the time was indeed right next to Karak Market, and I didn't mention my whereabouts in my previous account at all. The whole thing is still shrouded with mystery. Who was that shaman ghost? What was her goal of seducing me? And who was that made me fight the ghost off, speaking the things I didn't think I had any understanding, in the voice so much deeper and powerful than my own? Since that day, my singing voice got indeed a bit more opened up and deeper. And lastly, who was that guy that claimed to have caught that ghost? Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I read countless accounts about ghosts and rituals to get rid of them, but today's stories were slightly different kind. If I ever get undermined by an evil spirit, would I have such a power to resist and even repel it? I'm not so sure. What about you? If you enjoyed my work, please give it a like and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. Do you need some spooky, weird bedtime stories that you most likely have never heard from anywhere else? Just stay here and enjoy my 4-year worth of content. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Or if you'd prefer, there's YouTube's Super Thanks option too for a small donation. Thank you. Until next Sunday, stay safe and take care.